So it is currently the middle of winter here, as you can see. Like, that's all this lovely snow that I got on the outside. It's all over central New York. Why do I have my AC on? As you can see, maybe you can't see. AC there. It's 9 degrees out. Why? Now my AC, not super crazy. It's not on super high, but you can definitely start to see my breath here a little bit. So one of the things that I've been thinking about recently and struggling with and thinking about, through reading psychology books and all that stuff and listening to psychologists talk, and especially somebody like Jordan Peterson, who's somebody that I've learned a lot from. I just read his first book, and somebody I'm going to start reading the second book in a little bit, is kind of the idea of suffering and what suffering really means, and also how kind of suffering can kind of bring meaning to life. So I was thinking about this last night before I made this, was the amount of success in your life is proportional, or the amount is proportional to the amount of ability that you have in a certain area times how much suffering that you can take and endure. So we obviously have to acknowledge that some people are just going to be naturally better at some things. That's kind of how it works. Like, I can endure all the suffering in the world. If I was trying to become the best basketball player I could work as hard as humanly possible. I'm probably not going to make it to the NBA. Really don't think so, considering I'm only 6 foot if I have heels on. So that is going to kind of be taken out of the equation. What then is left is your ability to endure suffering, which is something that you can definitely control yourself, okay? The amount of suffering that you want to go through and are willing to go through and can put yourself and kind of control your own thoughts to put yourself through that suffering will be directly related to how successful you are, or how successful you can be and want to be in whatever endeavor you're pursuing. So, again, to kind of make a workout example of this, because again, that's kind of the context of my life and how I really start to view and wrap my head around these things, is, so it's a stress response that we learn kind of in normal biology class. It's called general adaptation syndrome, and there's 3 parts to it, okay? So there's the alarm phase, there's the resistance phase, and then there's the exhaustion phase. So this was kind of modeled through a study with rats, where they would actually drop rats in a bucket of water. So that's the alarm phase, right? So the alarm phase is a response, or is your a stressor, okay, being placed upon you, okay? So in this case, it was the rats being dropped in the bucket of the water. They're freaking out for a second, right? The resistance phase is how long that they actually tried to respond to that stressor. And then the exhaustion phase was kind of when they gave up, okay? So in a workout context or anything else, the alarm phase is the actual workout, okay? So you actually basically hurt your body within a controlled context, or place stressors on your body within a controlled context in a workout to then elicit an adaptation, which is when you grow and adapt, and that's the resistance. So remember, alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. Exhaustion would only really starts to happen when maybe you start to train way too hard and you start to burn out, or you start to hurt yourself, which is very possible, but you have a lot more in you than you actually realize. So alarm is the actual stimulus. Resistance is you adapting to that stimulus, okay? But if the alarm phase isn't big enough, or if the workout isn't hard enough, it then doesn't elicit a response to that, okay? So to kind of tie it back to the earlier reason, or the earlier statement, the amount of success that you have, again, outside of ability, is directly proportional to the amount of suffering that you can endure. Again, there are always going to be people who are extremely talented and might make it to a professional sports league without ever really trying, but then those are the people who don't maybe necessarily stay there for super long, okay? Then there's the other end of the spectrum. Maybe people who have not a lot of ability, and the only reason I'm saying this is because I'm sure he would say it himself, is if you take somebody like David Goggins, who made it through SEALs training, but it took him 3 tries, right? He didn't have the ability to swim at the start. He wasn't a super great runner. He was actually, really, really heavy at one point in his life. So he had very low natural given ability, but had such a high ability to suffer and endure pain and discomfort that he made something of himself, right? How successful you are is the product of your ability times how much suffering you can endure. Okay, so even if you don't have a lot of ability, if you can endure a higher proportion of suffering, you can kind of even out that equation. Okay, so the reason I started driving to work, despite it being snowy out, with the AC on in my car, is basically to see if I could. There's a couple physiological reasons. Literally just being colder throughout the day. Or hotter to, you having to thermoregulate as opposed to with your own internal body, or by yourself. See, it's almost getting too cold for me to think. If you have to just regulate your own body temperature by yourself, it actually takes a little bit more energy. You spend some more calories throughout the day. Maybe has a minimal effect on fat burning. Then there's 2 different types of fat. In reference to, there's white fat and there's brown fat. White fat is kind of the fat that you store for excess energy, but then there's brown fat, which is only used really for, as far as we know, for thermogenesis, which is by internal body heat, and it's actually shown that leaner people have more brown fat, and you can kind of also develop that brown fat through cold exposure, like a cold tub or cryotherapy or something like that. Great, right? But while those are great benefits that I'm kind of experimenting with, I have no idea to know if those personally would work, although they have been shown in some other studies. What's really important to me is to experience another form of suffering to show myself that I can do it, okay? Yeah, it's really cold right now, and it was really, really cold the first couple times I did this, but then after a couple minutes, I get used to it, and I'm not shivering as much, even though it's still the same temperature in here. I've been doing a couple miles of sled drags a week backwards. I did 25 miles with 1 plate on our little mini sled. I'm going to be doing mile number 30 today. I've worked up to 2 plates now. And towards the end, when I was reaching mile 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, the 1 plate didn't really feel like anything anymore. Although when I started, it burned my legs. It really sucked. And now that I went back up in weight, it's really starting to suck again. But if I can continue to push myself through that, well, guess what? It's really helped my knee pain, any sort of knee injuries that I might have, that I've gotten through trying to squat as heavy as I could. Continue to put yourself in situations where you can rise up to the challenge and hold yourself up to a high standard that you then can rise to. And guess what? When that happens, the next time that a situation comes around that you have to rise to the challenge, you're going to be a little bit better at it. And then that's how you continue to grow and adapt as a person. Doesn't matter if you're driving to work with the AC on. Doesn't matter if you're not very good at reading and you're trying to read a book, or if you have to go through school and you have work that you don't want to do. How successful you are is going to be proportional to how much suffering you can endure. Okay? So find a way for you to endure a little bit more suffering today to pursue a little bit more meaning and success. So I was thinking about kind of being done with the video from the first part, but kind of started thinking throughout the day. So now I'm at the end of my day, still driving home with the AC on, as you can see, but now I started thinking a little bit more about some of the things I said in the first part. And one thing I was thinking was almost like, why does this matter? Like, why would you want to pursue suffering? I kind of presented what that was. Like, it's right. It's like that suffering that is a stressor. That's the alarm phase that causes you to adapt and then grow and then get better because of that stressor. But why? So, it's really tough to force yourself to do something like that. That's really hard to do. Our brains aren't necessarily wired to pursue this discomfort and suffering. As we evolved throughout our whole history, we were supposed to pursue things that were pleasurable, that we're supposed to pursue food or pursue warmth or shelter, because those were the things that kept us alive. And that's kind of how our brain evolved. But the thing is, now all of those things are so incredibly plentiful that we tend to overindulge into things that provide us pleasure, and that leads to more problems. So one of the reasons why we want to pursue suffering is because those in our modern day society, those are where the opportunities lie for personal growth and development. Okay? So it's tough because, again, you're not necessarily wired to pursue this discomfort and suffering, but you need to, because that's where growth and development happens. So it's called the comfort zone for a reason. If you stay in your comfort zone all the time, where everything is easy, breeze, walk in the woods, you might be momentarily happy, or kind of maybe project the idea that you're happy, but without that pursuit of self-improvement, I have found personally that is what brings actual happiness, because that's what builds actual confidence and love for yourself and all that things. Like, when you continue to put yourself into situations that might be really tough and you continue to excel in spite of that, when you make it through a hard workout, at the end you're like, that was really tough, but I got that was awesome. Or when you're reading something that's really tough and it takes a really long time for your brain to digest it because it's got a bunch of big concepts or something in it, that's really tough, but that's where all the reward comes from. That's where all that personal growth and development comes from. So again, I'm driving, it gets cold up here in New York. A lot of people don't like living up here, but I can either waste the time and mental energy bitching and complaining that I live in a very cold spot, or I can just teach myself to be used to it and adapt to it, and then it's not that cold anymore. I'm choosing to spend that energy to adapt, grow, and develop, and hopefully you do too. So again, go and try to find something that is tough, provides a little bit of suffering, and see if you can get better at it. Bye.